Hi, everybody. Richard Shelp with Executive Speakers Bureau, and today is the 5th edition of Behind the Curtain. In Behind the Curtain, we tell you a little something about some of our favorite speakers, and we teach you something that'll help you with your speaking business. Today's guest is Paul Epstein. Paul is a former NFL and NBA executive. He is a leadership and sales expert, and he's author of 2 big books, one of them being The Power of Playing Offense. Paul, welcome, and we love having you as a guest today.
Oh, thank you so much, Richard. Fired up to be here.
Oh, we love it. Hey, let me tell you, anytime anybody thinks about Paul, if they know him at all, they associate him with the San Francisco 49ers.
Yep.
And little known fact, though, is that Paul got married in Levi's Stadium, which is home of the San Francisco 49ers. That by itself is pretty incredible, but you really have a great story. Tell me about that.
Well, for one, I'll say this before people judge me and say, oh my gosh, you took your wife to a football field. The venue was her idea, I swear. So let's start with that.
Okay, we'll stick with that.
But we'll stick with that, yeah. And she's also a converted Raider fan. So that was, you want to talk about a sales expert? That might have been the greatest sale of my life, okay? But it was almost a wedding that never happened. And when I say that, it was, so for those that, when I say the words gravedigger, you immediately think of, oh, okay, this is a person. But in this case, I'm actually not talking about gravedigger, the person. I'm talking about gravedigger, the monster truck. Because it was a monster truck. It was Monster Jam, which is what they call their nationwide tour and their event that just goes all over stadiums throughout the U.S. And it was supposed to be, so, okay, February of 2016, Super Bowl 50 at Levi's Stadium. As the paint is literally still drying, March 12 was our big wedding day of 2016. Monster Jam was supposed to come in late March, and then the national tour promoter had a couple of audibles, and so he calls the COO, who was my boss, and said, hey, we might need to come in early March. I see you have no big public events. And my boss, not knowing about a small private event called a wedding, he kind of was like, sure, yeah, let's roll with it. And then when he did a little digging, his assistant says, hey, Ethan, we got to talk because Paul's kind of getting married. And so immediately he calls me into the office and he's like, dude, you're not going to guess what happened. And I'm so sorry, but I'm trying to figure this out. We're trying to put the whole puzzle together. So literally I was like, the freaking monster trucks are about to cancel the wedding. So he had a relationship. He knew me, my wife, and he said, my wife's name's Myra. He said, are you going to tell Myra? I'm going to try to figure this out. I said, so you want to talk about, all right, I wrote a book, Better Decisions Faster. Right. I wish I had the book back then because it would have helped me make the decision. But you know, I thought, okay, if I tell her, but if it survives, and it was like all ado for nothing, but if I don't tell her, and so, you know, I took the path of least resistance. I did not tell her, and he said, give me a week, we're going to figure this out. And so that week felt like a year of
I'm sure
tick-tock and waiting, and finally he says, hey, let's have the conversation. And the immediate words were, we saved the wedding.
Oh,
you're going to get married. And Richard, business decision, they should have moved the monster trucks. This was a 7-figure decision. The business Microsoft Excel decision was move Monster Jam. It's financially what makes sense. But when we say people first, is it a bumper sticker or is it a way of life? And in this case, the reason I will bleed red and gold for the rest of my life is decisions like that were made behind closed doors. So you want to talk about what separates great leaders from the rest of the pack. It's how they show up behind closed doors. But the funny ending to this story was I was so emotionally charged up and I gave Ethan a big bear hug, like, thank you, brother, you saved the wedding. I sprint home and my wife is already home. And I say, honey, you're never going to believe this. The wedding is saved. And she looked at me like, what the hell are you talking about? She actually said it with a couple more colorful words than that. But yeah, so I survived. I'm still alive to tell this story. Thankfully, it was a rocky 24 hours and I had to unpack it all. But again, moral of the story is leadership is who you are behind closed doors. And thank goodness to people like Ethan, who's now the president and CEO of the Minnesota Timberwolves. That's how he showed up for me and my family behind closed doors.
I got to tell you, it's when times are tough, when true character is shown, and there you go. I think it's unbelievable. You gave two great examples through there of how your position at the 49ers kind of helped you with sales and leadership and you moving in that direction. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Handful of months after the wedding, I went to a retreat that changed my life. So I know we're talking to speakers, meeting planners, bureaus, everybody. And like, we've all been to those offsites. We've all been to those retreats. And there's a variety of impact that it can have on us long term. And for me, it was the first time in my professional career that I had a chance to do some self-discovery work. So my boss, the team president, all the C-suite, we go offsite for 2 days, find your why, unearth your core values. And it could have ended there. But to me, I was inspired and I felt drawn to these North Stars, but I didn't want them to stay North Stars.
Sure.
I got obsessed with how do I apply them on Monday morning? Because that's where the rubber meets the road. And that's why we'll talk about Win Monday and Monday Momentum. And that's a part of my keynote promise to everybody. But where I started to understand the importance of applying things, making decisions, behavioral, taking actions. And for me, it connected me to who I am. I left knowing what I stand for. But now I had to marry that to how I'm going to show up. So it's that alignment, that congruence. And so, you know, I go back to the office back at the Niners and I'm preaching from the mountaintops. Let me tell you all about this retreat. And my team one by one said, I want some of that. And then eventually the water cooler buzz started. And so some of the coaches on the football side came up to me, then some of the players, and then HR approaches me and says, what do you think of coaching the why to our onboarding employees?
There you go.
And that's how I became known as the why coach of the San Francisco 49ers. Richard, greatest graduation of my life, from career to calling. I felt called to pay this gift of purpose forward, and it eventually leads to a Jerry Maguire leap, and here we are now in the thought leadership space. But if it wasn't for that retreat, I'm not sure we're having this conversation.
I really love that, because it's so special to be able to have that moment. Not everybody has those moments. Yep. Sometimes you have to figure things out over a long period of time, but you had a lightning bolt moment, which
100%.
Which is incredible. I really believe that sports franchise executives, such as you were in that it is a great training ground for being successful overall in business. Mm-hmm. Would you agree that that's the case based on your experience?
You're around the highest performers and highest achievers in the world. Now, the world didn't know the Paul of the Niners, but they know the quarterback, they know the running back, they know the receiver. If you're in basketball, hockey, soccer, whatever the sport is, you know the celebrity, you know the athlete. But there's a 365 operating engine that fills the stadiums, that gets the sponsors, that monetizes this wonderful business that the world will only know the other side. And so we don't do it for the fame or glory. But the beauty is, as a speaker, I get to apply that to every single person in an audience because I've been in the same trenches. I could tell you if I was the quarterback how to throw the game-winning pass, but I can't tell you how to be the best accountant. I can't tell you how to be the best lawyer.
Right.
I can't tell you how to be the best marketer. But in my case, because I was on the business side, I gained the benefits of standards of excellence to be around the top 0.01% in the world at what they do, the top performers and the top achievers. And that spirit of the sporting field permeated the front office. So we adopt that mindset. We adopt the standard of excellence, but now we apply it to being the best leader possible, being the best seller possible, and the list goes on. So when I talk to audiences, I say, I've been in the same bloody trenches. I've been in the same challenging situations. And so I can take this backdrop of the sexy appeal of sports industry, but say, I'm not here to talk to you about the plays on the field or the court of the ice. I'm here to talk to you about the boardroom. And that's the part where I say, here's a story, we're hooked. And then it's, here's how it applies to you. And here's one new thing that you can do on Monday morning because of this application.
Well, the comparison between involvement in sports and involvement in business, the level of competition, the things and challenges you have, the successes that you have to work from, the failures you have to work from, it mirrors very similarly both things. I mean, my
100%.
my time in coaching and participating in sports, it's the same way. It's led me into what I do in business. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah, and one thing that I want to double click on, and you're bringing us to a great place, is it's all about the team.
Yeah.
And so with every audience in every business, we say it's about the team, but then it's show me. And if we use this word like culture, is culture your competitive advantage?
Right.
Because here's what I learned about being in the NFL and NBA. What is not the athlete's separator are their gifts, their talents, their abilities, or their skill. At one point in their life, it was. In high school, they were a man amongst boys, or in college, of course, there's a talent gap. Not in the pros.
No.
You're all amazing. And so I feel the same about our space. I don't feel like I'm more gifted or talented. There are people that speak at a major league level. And so when I understood that that is not my separator, I then asked myself, so how can I separate myself from the pack?
Sure.
And that's where the intangibles, things like the work ethic and the attitude, and it's all these controllables, but they're standards and they're character driven, like you said. But if we can scale that standard of excellence and make it behavioral, that's a culture that I would bet on. And that's how culture becomes a competitive advantage. And that's for sports, that's for business, that's every single aspect of life that requires a team to win.
Absolute great points. I love it. And I'm all about teams, let me tell you. So what we also do in our little segment is we teach the speakers a little something that they may not already know that can help them with their speaking businesses. You have mentioned to me that you have a three-pronged philosophy, and you referred to it earlier. You talk about your presentations, you want to educate, inspire, and transform.
Yep.
Tell me a little more about that.
Yeah, and it's not only a strategic side, but I just think it's to maximize impact. Like if we're not doing this for impact and making a difference and leaving people in places, and if we're not leaving people in places better than we found them, then why are we doing it? And so my philosophy has always been inspire, educate, transform. So starting with inspiration, and this is the through line of every talk. It goes in this order. So the Latin definition of inspire is to breathe life into. So if I'm speaking, the first 10 minutes are all about breathing life into the room. And it's about human connection. It's about laughter. It's about me meeting them at the 50 so that every person in the audience knows I'm on your side. I'm one of you. I'm not speaking from a high level stage. This is not my ego coming across as the expert. I've just been through some things that I know can help and improve people, business leaders, sales performers, and just lives in general. So that's the inspire piece. But then this education, so if that's like the middle 80% of a talk, that's our core content. But as we know, Richard, if it's just content after golden nugget, a lot of that gets forgotten.
That's right.
What people remember are stories.
Yes, I do.
And the emotions and the feelings, how you leave people feeling. And so if that's the education, I have a three-pronged approach even within the education. I will tell the most applicable and relevant stories based on what I learned in the pre-call and understanding, customizing, and tailoring all the client points. But then I say, okay, that's a story, but that's still not good enough. It's a partial solution. Then I need to say, and here's how this applies to you. That's really the $1 million ROI. And then the end piece is, and here's one thing that you can do differently on Monday morning. So it's story to application to one thing. That thing can be a tactic, a tool, a mindset shift, but one thing, and it's got to be doable. What I love about Monday is not only it gets you to reset for a new week ahead, but it also implies that it's not too big. I'm not going to conquer the world by Monday, but I can change one thing. And so that's kind of the bow on education. And then transformation is, well, that's why we do what we do. That's why you do what you do. That's why I do what I do. There's every person we meet, there's a current state, and then there's an optimal future state. Our mission is to take them from here to there, and that's transformation. So in summary, it's inspire, to breathe life into. It's the education, which is the story, the application, and one thing they can do differently on Monday morning. And then it's the transformation. And I make it real. Every single audience I speak to, I have them join Monday Momentum, which is basically my rule is No sugar highs allowed. I am not going to be the sugar high guy. You're going to know how to win every single Monday, next week, and the following, and the following. So when you bring me in, you're hiring a partner for life. And I think that's the separator. You know, like, I don't just want the inspiration. I want somebody that's going to change and transform me, because I've been the student. I've gone to that retreat. I've been in the keynote audience. So now that I'm on the stage, I'm treating everybody how I wanted to be treated back then.
Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Yeah.
Of those three elements, which one would you say is the most important?
Education, if people know what to do on Monday.
Okay.
That Monday piece is the separator, because then there is something tangible. It's more than a feeling. It's this element of being tangible. And it's such a hard question. It's like asking who your favorite kid is, you know, like, it's like, oh, if I don't breathe life into the room, then they don't absorb it. But at the end of the day, people want to know, what can I do better on Monday morning?
Okay,
and
absolutely.
I think that is the separator, if you force me to choose one.
Well, and I think the difference in what you're talking about, your approach, and really that you see more now with great presenters versus what the case was 5 or 6 years ago, is that you want that extending beyond the presentation, the impact beyond.
Has to.
And I think that is absolutely fabulous. That is great stuff. I love the insight that you provided us today. I think you taught our audience some great things. So, Paul, thank you for taking the time for all of us today. And thank you, audience, for your attention. And next time, stay tuned for future episodes in which you can truly see what's behind the curtain.